Hey there, welcome to the Alive and Well Health Podcast, where my hope is that we create long-lasting transformation from the inside out, as I like to connect with people who want the same for us. My guest today is Jennifer Patricca, sports dietitian for over 20 plus years. Her business, Optimized Nutrition, helps athletes, specifically runners, with fatigue, GI issues, optimizing their sweat, their nutrition before, during, and after runs.
I think as a society, we have a hard time with moderation.
Wait, hold on. Say that again.
I just say that as a society, we have a hard time with moderation. I see it a lot. And, it doesn't necessarily just apply to food. It applies to everything we do in life. And so a lot of my time is spent coaching people on, well, okay, you had this setback, but, next time we'll just get back on track and do the best that you can, but it doesn't have to be all or nothing.
She also helps those in competition, as she herself has done triathlons, marathons, Ironmans. She's done it all. She has a lot of knowledge, information about this topic, and I had a bunch of questions because I've been trying to get into running, but it's been horrible. And you guys have had questions too that I've asked her. So let's get into this talk. I hope you enjoy it. Before we continue, I want to plug the GoFundMe below. We're raising money to build water wells in India and other places of the world. This is for small villages, rural areas that don't get adequate drinking water or clean drinking water. They don't have a neighborhood dollar store or Walmart that they can just pop by and grab some bottled water. So we've been doing this, and it's been successful the last couple times we've done it. And it doesn't take a lot of money. $500 is pretty much all we need, and we can build at least one or feed a couple families with that money. So can you help us reach our goal of building 3 water wells this year? That means $1,500 total. And so with your generosity today, someone or a group of people today can say they are alive and well. Thanks. All right, so your specialty, or at least what you've been practicing a lot, is with runners and their nutrition. You've been a runner yourself, and I'm actually curious on your marathon running. You've completed a marathon, you've completed an Ironman. Can you talk a little bit about that experience? That's pretty cool. I would like to do that one day in my life. What was that experience like?
Well, as a runner, you start doing shorter distances, like you do 5Ks, 10Ks, and then half marathons. And then, you're like, well, I could probably do a marathon. So, a lot of it is not just doing the race, but it's the training behind it. You spend, like for a marathon, probably at least 3 to 4 months. An Ironman might be more like 6 months. And, you just have I've always had a training plan. I've always had a coach to help me, in that endeavor. But then also looking at, the nutrition behind it. With athletes, it's really important to make sure that you're not only eating enough, but then eating at the right time. So what are you doing before, during, and after exercise? And, I understand that marathons and Ironmans and things like that seem like a very lofty goal, but honestly, it's just about, having a plan and following it and being consistent.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to say. That's where we need your help. I remember in 2020 when COVID was happening, I tried to get into running more, and because I couldn't get in the gym, so I was like, let me try this running stuff. And I remember doing not even a quarter mile. It was probably less than that, and I was winded, totally out of it, but try to stay consistent, and I started getting to a mile, 2 miles. Now I can roughly get 3, but it is true. You start very humbly when you start running, and then you consistency is the biggest thing I think with running. Is that correct to say? So one of your posts was about pre and post running, fuel before you run and stuff like that. So I kind of want to get some thoughts on your side of things, what you teach your clients and things like that. What's a easy or maybe overlooked thing that people do prior to running? How are they fueling incorrectly? What should we be thinking about how we should fuel? Because when I was in school, and maybe this is too general, but for general sports competitions and stuff, they would say carb load. And is that advice still applicable to running? How do you view that stuff?
Well, so first of all, I would say one of the big things that runners, do or don't do before their runs is, a lot of them don't take the time to eat
Mm,
because either it's early in the morning, which, as you know, we live in Florida. It actually has cooled off this week, but prior to that, it was hot for quite a
yeah.
few weeks and before the cold spell. But anyway, so not taking enough time to actually eat, being worried that whatever they eat is going to cause some kind of stomach upset. So that's another thing. So what I tell my clients is, make sure that you get up early enough so that you can have something small. It doesn't have to be anything big. It is mostly carbs because carbohydrates provide energy for our brain and for our muscles. And so you just want to make sure that you're having something beforehand to not only provide that energy, but also to maintain your blood sugar levels so that you can perform well during, that run. So
Hmm.
that's very important. And there was a second part to your question, about carb loading.
Yeah.
And so carb loading, just to give you a little bit of background, it was, developed by some researchers, I believe, like maybe in the 70s. And back then, what they were doing is they were actually depleting people of carbs and then loading them up to help with activity. But like the fact that you're having to deplete and then load up, like that's a lot of strain on your body. And so now the rule of thinking is that if you're going to be exercising for probably more than an hour and a half, so if you're doing a race like a half marathon, for most people, they're probably going to be out there for 2+ hours.
Mm,
And so the thought process is, yes, let's go ahead and, make sure that those carbohydrate stores are stocked. And so just to back up, your body actually stores carbohydrates in your liver and your muscles in the form of glycogen.
mm-hmm.
And so if you're carb loading, that is going to stock up the glycogen stores. And, there are other ways to make sure that your glycogen stores are optimal besides just the carb loading by making sure that you're eating enough carbs like throughout the day. Also making sure that you're fueling before exercise with the carbs, during if you need to do that if it's long enough, and then also optimizing your post-workout recovery too. So just wanted to point that out. But back to the carb loading, that is a very specific thing that you do for a short amount of time. Like if you're doing a half marathon, it might be 1 to 2 days. If you're doing a full marathon, it might be, 2 to 3. It can even be 5 if you need to, because it is a lot of carbohydrate.
Hmm.
They recommend between 8 to 12 grams per kilogram of body weight.
8 to 12.
So just to give you an example, I did one recently because I ran the Gasparilla half marathon on Sunday. And so I did a 1 day load and I did 454 grams of carbs, which just as a reference point, like if you have a cup of rice, that's about 50 grams, 45 to 50 grams of carbs. So that's quite a lot of food in 1 day.
And so you didn't feel overstuffed or anything the day of the race?
I will admit you do by the end of the day, you're like, okay, I'm kind of done with eating, which is kind of an interesting feeling, especially if you're more moderate like I am. But at the same time, you just kind of have to power through, and you can always include things like juice and Gatorade and other carbohydrate drinks if that helps you, just, not eating. If
Yeah.
things become tiresome is what I'm trying to say. Like, it sounds like it's a really fun venture in theory, but like once you get down to it, it's like, okay, well, I've got one job today. I actually have to eat.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've seen and I don't know if it's the same for running a marathon versus a CrossFit competition versus just body weight training or lifting weights. I've seen these athletes will just consume just an absorbent amount of food before these competitions. And so I didn't know if the understanding is the same for any kind of sport, or if it's only just for like a specific, like it's an endurance kind of sport or it's a weightlifting kind of sport. Like, does the principle still stay the same?
Well, so I will say, if you're doing like a shorter race, like a 10K or a 5K, you really don't need to worry about any of that carb loading stuff.
Hmm.
Um, you know, Depending on how long some of these competitions are lasting, I mean, it might not hurt to do a carb load. I mean, I can't say for sure, but I would think that you would want be very intentional about your choices the week up to it. It's like with carb loading, kind of the idea is you decrease your training and you increase the amount that you're eating. And I would think that it would be very, very similar to other sports as well.
Yeah. So I like something you just said. I I think this is kind of what you were maybe hinting to, but it's not only important the day before, but even the week of, correct? And so here's something that I've noticed a trend. I don't know if it's a trend or if it's just more people doing it and they're just posting about it. In the sports world or in the fitness world, there's more people becoming vegans, and they are promoting that as like the way to be your best optimal fitness, and this has really helped me get to whatever level and stuff like that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on if a certain lifestyle, diet, food group, or whatever is appropriate for your population, and then just generally for like athletics.
Well, I will say that, there are influencers out there that are basically they're proponents of a specific way, like vegan or whatever, and then they push that on everybody else. And
Hmm.
I don't necessarily think that that's completely the best thing to do, just because if you think about it, we're all very different individuals. And so for you to say, well, this is the best way,
Yeah.
how do you know that?
Right.
I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of research behind eating more plant-based, which is very popular right now, which isn't as strict as vegan because, vegans don't eat any animal products. And some of them even get very specific about, like, they don't do honeys, they don't do, any kind of animal products like leather or anything like that either. And so, I think that, eating that way, it can be very healthy, but at the same time, it can also be very restrictive. Like, you'd
Mm.
never be able to, it'd be very difficult for you to eat out, to attend social events.
Yeah.
Um, so that's, consideration. But, they have found research that has shown that, even if you try to eat more plant-based, reduce some of your consumption of meat, that can be beneficial too. And so, I think as a society, we have a hard time with moderation.
Ah, wait, hold on. Say that again. Say that again.
I just say that as a society, we have a hard time with moderation.
So true.
I see it a lot. And, at the same, it doesn't necessarily like just apply to food. It applies
Hmm.
to everything we do in life. And so a lot of my time is spent coaching people on, well, okay, you had this setback, but, next time we'll just get back on track and do the best that you can, but it doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Is there a certain principle you live by as far as like moderation goes? Because I try to, this is not like a rule. I try to follow like 80%. I do really try to live well. And 20%, if I mess up, it's not like a huge deal. Just get back on it. Do you follow like any kind of rule for yourself that has worked really well?
Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily like follow a rule. I guess what I do is kind of think about, well, what are some things that I can add in? For example, I'm married to an Italian. We had a
Okay.
lot of pizza. We have a lot of pasta in my house. And so it's like, well, I can have those things, but then I also need to balance it out by having vegetables.
Hmm.
So if we order pizza, I have a salad. So I guess maybe my rule is just that I always have a balanced meal. And I try to think about like including, lean protein and vegetables and, some kind of grains and carbohydrates. So
He's Italian, so does he have a real particular pizza spot he likes?
actually, I bought some for him. I went out to eat at Olivia, which is a restaurant in St. Pete, and there's one in Tampa as well. And I got a pizza from there, and he said it was a good pizza. So, and I would agree, they have good Italian food. So.
Nice. Okay, so we were talking a little bit about pre-competition fuel, and you're saying the word carbohydrates. There's a lot of like misunderstanding maybe on what carbohydrates are, the different kinds. One of the questions I had was, can you help us understand carbohydrates versus fats versus proteins, and just like how it is like an easy way to think about it, and then the specifics of carbs, complex versus simple, um, in that sense, and how we should think about the certain foods to like think as pre-competition and not these foods, right? Because they can be classified as carbs, but maybe this is better than that, right?
And so, like, for pre-competition, actually, we should be thinking about simple carbohydrates, which I know they tend to get a bad rap because, it is things that are refined, that are more simple sugars, but you actually need that before competition because your body needs to be able to access that quickly for energy. Um, so pre-workout, I'd recommend, something simple like a piece of toast, an English muffin, a banana. I have a lot of athletes that use Pop Tarts, which I know people would be like, "Oh my god, a chip
Interesting.
tart,"
Yeah.
but they actually work well because they're a simple carb, something you can take down easily. And
Yeah.
and not necessarily something I'd recommend for like the general public, especially if you're trying to lose your weight or avoid diabetes or heart disease
Right.
and things like that. But this is just something very specific. And then, throughout the rest of the day, then you include the complex carbohydrates, because those help. They take a little bit longer for your body to break them down, and so they help you maintain your energy levels. And, some better sources would be like whole grains. So like brown rice, whole wheat pasta, quinoa, whole wheat bread. But then also thinking about the complex carbs you find in vegetables. So like potatoes, sweet potatoes, beans, and lentils. Like those would be some other good sources as well.
Do you do anything during your runs? I saw a post that you had some supplements in your hand, whether it's, I think it was like Gatorade packs or something. Is there some specific stuff that you like to use that you recommend to a lot of your clients?
Well, let me just back up and also
Sure.
explain like the process of like fueling during exercise. So if you're going to be out there for an hour or more, then you need to start to think about, well, how am I going to fuel for exercise? And so the recommendations are between 30 and 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour. And so if you're new to this, then you would start more towards the 30 grams per hour end. If you're more advanced, then you can do up to 60. And they've even shown studies like specifically with Ironman endurance athletes that they can get up to 90 grams an hour.
Hmm.
And the thought is, you're burning calories. I mean, just to give you an example, I did that half marathon yesterday. I burned like over 1,200 calories.
Yeah.
And so, your body needs some energy besides just what you have on hand from your glycogen. So, as far as like fueling during exercise, there's different things that you can use, and really it's kind of a personal preference. As long as it has that amount of carbohydrate per hour, that's kind of the thing. A lot of people use gels, which those are what I had in my hand in that picture, and those are just like a simple like syrup kind of thing that you just take down, and then you want to make sure you take some water with it to help it be able to digest it. There are like little chews, which are kind of like little like gummy candies. You can also like fuel with sports drinks because those contain carbohydrates, so like Gatorade, and there are some other specific, um, like running formulas like Scratch and Tailwind. Those are just some brands. And honestly, it's just a personal preference. I found a gel that I really like. It actually contains a little bit of water, so it's a little bit easier to get down. It's a little bit thinner, so it's not so thick.
Yeah.
And so, like, just to give you an example, like yesterday, so I, try to get between that 30 to 60 an hour. And so every, 30 minutes was a little bit closer to 25, but around every 25 to 30 minutes, I was doing one of those gels.
Hmm.
And so you've got to like practice that during training so that you know what you can handle like during a race. Because you want
Right.
any surprises. You don't want any cramping or any GI distress.
Right. So one of the things that I noticed was you were talking about electrolytes on your website, and there's a lot of products out there that will say zero sugar and electrolytes as the marketing. What should we, as just normal consumers, and we're trying to find a product or how should we read the label? What are specifically, as far as electrolytes go, maybe the ratio of electrolytes? What should we be looking for so that we're more intentional or aware of what we're putting in our body?
Well, so first of all, you want to understand that the electrolyte that we lose the most of in our sweat is sodium. So make sure that your electrolyte drink has sodium. Not all of them do.
Mm.
A couple that I can think of off the top of my head would be like Prime and
Okay.
the one that's coconut based. It's coconut water. I'll think of it in a minute.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just having it.
No, that's good.
But those are a couple. So that would be something I would make sure. And then the other thing is too, how much sodium does it have in it? And then also too, so carbohydrate actually help your body absorb the sodium better, which is why you have, Gatorade is like the original sports drink formula because it was, designed to help with rehydration. So you've got the sodium and you've got the glucose. So if you happen to have an electrolyte drink that doesn't have sodium or doesn't have carbohydrates, then where else are you getting your carbohydrates from? It was an important consideration for hydration. But I will say there's a lot of marketing out there towards electrolyte. Do I think that everybody needs it? Maybe not. And then especially if you have, any conditions like hypertension, that's something to consider because typically they will have you reduce your sodium content to help, lower your blood pressure. So
Right.
kind of keep those things in mind.
No, that's good because I even myself, who tries to stay aware with all the stuff happening, I just see that more marketing is getting better. So, so like you have to really be intentional to turn the bottle around. Just like, what is, how much? So that's good for us to be aware of. Sodium is the big one, obviously. And then I do like that you threw in if you have a pre-existing condition of like hypertension or something, you need to probably speak with Jennifer on the risks and rewards to some of these drinks because it probably can be making things worse even though you're trying to make a informed decision. You just need a coach, a healthcare provider to help you. So that is actually very good because I know a lot of runners in the physical therapy side, when we see older people that want to get back to running and they have diabetes and heart failure and all this, and they're like, I just want to run again. And I'm like, brother, we gonna try, but I ain't got over here trying. So it's good to connect. I always connect somebody to a dietitian, and so this is my public plug to connect you to Jennifer as well. Um, as far as after your runs, whether it's competition, well, it's probably more competition. Um, what is it that you're doing to fuel yourself to recover? A big thing that I get questions a lot is like, how do you recover well? And on a therapy side, there's certain answers to it, but on a fueling side and on a food side, how do you talk to your clients about that?
Yeah, well, so there's an important like window, I call it kind of a window of opportunity after exercise that's within 30 to 60 minutes to help you replace your glycogen stores. And then also, so you need carbohydrate. And then you also need protein to help with muscle recovery. And so, like, for an example, if you're perhaps maybe going for a long run and then you come home and you get busy, you take a shower, you kind of forget about eating. It's not that you're not going to have some benefit a couple of hours later, but you're just going to have more benefit if you do it sooner.
Mm.
So just trying to make sure that you get that in. So it's, somewhere between like 20 to 40 grams of protein, like 50 plus grams of carbs, just a combination of those. They've done, some research that with different ratios, like a 3-to-1, a 4-to-1, a 2-to-1, and they all showed some benefits. So I think the main thing is just, being intentional about that choice. I have a lot of runners who say they're not necessarily hungry after they, work out. And so doing something like a liquid. So like, for example, like chocolate milk, core power drinks. They do make like specific like recovery beverages that have some carbs and protein in them. But, always like to mention the chocolate milk because usually you can find that. Like if you're going somewhere and, you're stopping at a convenience store, you could probably find that.
Is that why these competitions do beer at the end too for the carbs?
No, I don't think that they
Oh
do
yeah.
that. Like for example, like yesterday they were handing out Michelob Ultra, and I think it
Yeah.
already had like 1 gram of carbs.
Yeah, so it's not doing much.
That's more for like the fun of it,
That makes sense.
But maybe have like your recovery drink and then go get a beer afterwards.
Yeah. That makes sense. I wanted to ask you personally, do you think that in your lifetime of running, experience in it, do you think nutrition in and of itself, or a combination of both factors, has been the reason why you've been so successful in your running longevity?
Yeah, well, I would say it's probably a combination of both, and then a lot of persistence. One thing I didn't share with you is I've had a lot of injuries, especially like the last 2 or 3 years, and that's been really difficult. As far as like managing that, and then also managing my expectations. I've been running, since college, and so it's been a long time. It's been over 20 years. So, when I was younger, I was a lot faster, kind of slowed down a little bit these days, and had to kind of adjust my expectations. But at the same time, like I've learned more about nutrition and more about fueling my body and how, I can help myself with recovery. Like you mentioned, it becomes a lot more important as you age, for
Yeah.
sure. So that's definitely something you have to think about is, am I eating the right things, most of the time throughout the day? Am I thinking about the timing? Am I drinking enough water? Am I getting enough sleep? Which, that all plays a role as well.
Yeah. Running since you said in college, so you put a lot of miles on your hips and knees and joints probably. I know there's people that just want like the quick nuggets, okay? So, I'm going to ask you this question. You're experienced in running. What's the hack? What are like 3 tips that you do, or what is the regimen? What's the hack from an expert who's been in it, who knows your nutrition, who has her bangs and bruises and wisdom? Give us the hacks that you do that would help. Like, let's start with the beginner, who would help the beginner, and then who would help the intermediate, and then who would help the person training for the Ironman.
Well, I would say as a beginner, you need to make sure that are starting on a good note. Like it'd be helpful to, either have a coach or get involved with a running group, find some experts in the field to kind of help guide you. And, but at the same time, like take all of their advice with an open mind. But, I think the main thing is like listening to your body. But that was what I would say for a beginner.
Do you have any running groups that you are in, or that you plug, or you hang out with? There's a lot in Tampa.
A lot in Tampa. I was going to say, you mentioned that you started running during COVID, and I think that we're seeing some of the after effects of that because running is very popular right now.
Yeah.
The
It's a
Gala half marathon sold out, and I can't tell you if I remember a time that's ever happened before. So there's a lot of running groups. So I would just say, look on Facebook. I'm a member of the Loud Runners. We're not necessarily a big club, but we are in South Tampa, and a great group of very supportive individuals. But they're all over Tampa and all over St. Pete. And I would say if you have a running store close by you, go check that out because a lot of them do that. I've done a few events at like Fleet Feet North Tampa, and they have a big group that runs out of there. And then also St. Pete Running Company in St. Petersburg is another one. So just, kind of look and see where those are. Also, a lot of groups do like pub runs in the evening. Like they might meet at a pub and run and meet up. So that would also be something where you could find a group.
And then talk about like intermediate. So you've been, not you, but people been training for a little bit. What's like that hack to get them to the next level, to Ironman status?
Well, I mean, with intermediate, I think, you just have to be as consistent as you can be with your running. And, um, I would say at that point, like, setting goals for yourself would be helpful. Like, maybe looking towards doing, a bigger race. I heard somebody say earlier this year, I think it was an influencer, but anyway, it stuck out to me. It said, do a goal that kind of scares you a little bit. And I would agree with that in running too. So do something, that's going to challenge you a little bit, to get to that next step.
Yeah. And then when you think of like Ironmans and marathons, because those are like the 1%ers of people, what is it that really separates them from everybody else?
I mean, I would say just that consistency and also too, like as you're training for an event like that, you go through a lot of mental challenges. Like I can remember thinking like you look at a workout and you're like, well, I could never do that. And so, you just start and you go for 10 minutes and you go for 10 minutes more and then 10 minutes more. And then, pretty soon you're done. Yeah, that's a very simple way of thinking about it. At the same time,
Right.
like, it's like, okay, well, right now I have to swim and I've got to swim. And then when I get done swimming, then I've got to bike and then I get bike some more. And then when I run, then I run and then I'm done. But I think it's, it's like anything, like with goal setting, you create like smaller goals to get to that ultimate goal. Like I didn't mention this before, but I see a lot of people for weight loss, for instance. Well, I usually get people that are like, well, I want to lose 50 pounds. Well, how are we going to do that? Like it starts by, okay, well, I'm going to start walking. Give them like a step goal. Like we're going to start walking like 5,000 steps a day. But try to wear your watch, try to make sure you get to that point. As far as like nutrition's concerned, so maybe you aren't eating any fruits or vegetables right now at all. So maybe we start with 1 serving of each a day and work our way up that way. So I think it's like anything. You just create smaller goals within that main goal to help you get there.
Yeah, I was thinking that runners, from your intermediate to expert level runners, you guys are crazy to some degree. Like your mental psyche is probably just so different than anybody else's. And I just want to know, like, what is it about running like makes you tick? Like, what is the mental thing to it that just keeps you going, that wants to get more of it? How do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I think for me personally, it's just always something that I've enjoyed. But I will say too, at the same time, it's like you you're constantly like learning more about yourself and pushing yourself and what you can handle and what you think you can do. And sometimes you surprise yourself, sometimes you don't. But I think it's almost like it's a metaphor for life. You're never going to be successful all the time.
Mm.
But as long as you're trying to be consistent and moving towards the goal, that's the thing. But I for example, 2 weeks ago, I was doing some stretching and I pulled the QL muscle, which I know you know what that is. That's deep in your back. And
Mm.
so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to try to run a half marathon in 2 weeks. And so I'm going to have to take off a week. And I'm going to have to be really intentional with my rest and my icing and stretching. And maybe one of the keys is just being able to pivot and, adjusting what you have to do, but still keep moving at the same time.
Yeah, there's a mental toughness for sure that you have.
Yeah, but at the same time, you are always going to doubt yourself. So you
Ooh,
kind of have to like
it's just back and
to
forth,
figure out
huh?
like how to overcome that.
Yeah. I want to try this with you. I want to do these questions, but like kind of like in a rapid fire way. So you don't have to say a lot per se. You just give your quick sentence or something. Okay. All right. So as far as healthy fats, unsaturated or saturated, should we eat them? Unsaturated. Okay.
100% saturated fat, no.
What is your favorite fat?
Unsaturated fat, oh, I would say like fatty fish, like salmon, tuna, like sea bass. Those are some of my favorites.
Okay, that you eat pretty consistently.
I try to, yeah.
All right. Favorite pre-run meal.
So I would say, I don't know, lately I've been doing a lot of like for my runs, I just do like a Nutri-Grain bar. Something simple.
Okay. And then the supplement or the pack or snack you eat during your long runs.
I've been using some gels called Science and Sport. I believe it's a UK-based company. Anyway, they're good.
Okay. And then your favorite post-run meal, like I could eat this every day if I could.
I really like Kodiak pancakes. I don't know if you've seen those. They
Yeah,
have protein in them too. I really like those a lot.
that's pretty cool. How much water should a novice drink when they're starting to run?
So, Institute of Medicine, I believe, is like 9 cups a day for women and maybe like closer to 12 for men.
Okay. And then as you progress in your expertise level of running, do you think it should go more or less?
Probably more, but it really kind of depends on your sweat rate, how much sodium are you losing.
Hmm. Hot take on seed oils.
Oh, seed oils are okay. There's a lot of misinformation about that. Like, I have a blog post. If anyone wants to check out my blog, I've got a post about it.
Right. Do you think that it's certain seed oils that get all the blame for, or is it just all seed oils are everyone says is bad?
I think it's all of them. I think it's just kind of like a popular term right now.
Okay. Okay. We'll have to get into that in another talk. What supplement do you find helpful, or if there is a difference, if you're trying to improve your endurance versus if you're trying to improve your recovery? Does one supplement cover both, or do you find different things help for different reasons? Like the example that comes to my mind, a lot of people talk about beetroot for endurance and running longer versus like creatine for maybe more recovery stuff.
Yeah, I will say that they've done a lot of research with creatine recently, and they've shown that it can help with endurance too. I mean, that's
Hmm.
something I in particular take to help with that. Actually, they've shown a lot of benefit, even like for heart patients. Like it's pretty impressive.
Do you have any thoughts on beetroot? It's like everybody talks about it.
Yeah, so it has dietary nitric oxide, which helps improve vasodilation.
Halation. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, I think that can be helpful, but at the same time, if you try to eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, do, don't just narrow it down to one thing.
Gotcha. Yeah. I've been eating it more, so
Yeah. Well, I do like beet myself. Like I enjoy buying them and roasting them, and
yeah. Do you have a split like a running program? Like, do you do more long runs in the week? Do you split it up into like track sessions where you do sprint intervals? What's your favorite kind of split?
so for most people, like they recommend like a split of like 80-20. So 80% of your runs are like long runs, and then 20% you're doing either some kind of speed or tempo work. And so like for me, for example, in my stage of life, I'm running 4 days a week because I need some recovery, and then I also need some time to do some strength training as well.
Hmm.
But I do, two easy runs during the week, and then a track session, and then I do a long run on the weekends, and that may or may not have some, tempo work in it.
Hmm. No, I like that. What's your PRs like? Are you still trying to PR these days? Like, what do you?
No, I've hit those PRs a long time ago.
Okay. Yeah, because every time I hear people talk about running, it seems like everybody wants to get this PR every time. So I don't know if that's like realistic goal setting, but
I mean, it can be, if you've started running, within the last 5, to 10 years. But I think as you get older, I think you need to kind of maybe adjust your PR for your age.
I have a certain opinion on runners should strength train. What's your thoughts?
Oh yeah, they should definitely strength train, especially as you get older. You need that, not only for the strength, but also for the stability. And, I also believe in mobility work. I work with a trainer who we mainly focus on mobility because I've got some hip issues. Obviously, I've got some back issues too. So I think that's important. But you need a combination of both. And I will say that a lot of the classes at the gym are hit focused. That's
Mm.
not what runners need at all. We need just
Sl-
strength train.
Yep, slow, controlled. Wait.
That we've got the fitness. We don't need any more of that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's just something me personally that I've noticed. And
How do you train without putting miles on your legs? Like even runners who want to just keep running, but they're in an injury. And so, what would you tell people to use to train to try to keep running and stuff like that without losing all the progress that they've kind of built up?
so like swimming would be a good example of how to, maintain and improve your aerobic fitness. Cycling, if that's something that you can do as well. Even just walking, at least you're getting the movement too.
Have you over the years used an Alter G anti-gravity machine? Do you like that machine?
Yeah, it's very cool. So basically you put this thing on and it kind of inflates you so that you're lighter. So of course you feel like $1,000,000 when you're running because you're lighter.
Yeah, we have one at our facility, and so I use it a lot with people who want to run still. And I'm like, okay, we gotta get you to keep running, but not pound your joints away, you know? Yeah, no, that's cool. That and water running, like aquatics
Oh
therapy.
yeah, yeah. You can get like a belt and then just do some jogging.
Yeah, I think it's underutilized in the therapy sense, and so hearing it from, I always ask every healthcare professional, I'm like, what is your thoughts on this particular field? Because me trying to promote therapy, it's like it's not always just pain and torture. It's like beneficial to whatever goal they have, right? So I'm always curious on like what other healthcare providers think about some of this stuff.
And I will tell you that I was injured over the summer for several months and actually took like 2 months off of running. I can't tell you the last time I did that. And so, I had to go to the pool. And, obviously I have some experience in that being a triathlete, so it wasn't completely foreign to me, but.
Yeah. Last bit is I want you to talk about the sweat test. What is that? Why is it important that we measure our sweat?
So testing your sweat to determine the amount of fluid that you're losing and then the amount of sodium that you're losing is helpful. I mean, you can do sweat tests with weighing yourself before and after exercise, and then obviously accounting for any fluid that you might drink during activity. That's another way to do it. That is a little bit cumbersome. So this test will actually measure that. There's not really a way to measure sodium unless you're doing some kind of test like that. And so I've partnered with a company called Levelin. There are several other companies like H-Drop and Precision Hydration. They have sensors that you can purchase. And so I partnered with Levelin. They are actually a company out of Philadelphia. They mainly worked with like football players, and then they kind of got into the endurance space because it's like, well, these people actually probably need it more, and then they don't have access to fluid easily because of like when you think about it in a race, like, you're relying on an aid station, or if you're running, you have to carry something with you or find a water fountain. So anyway, a little bit of background behind that. So what this is a test that I would purchase for you, and then it comes in the mail. It is a little sensor. It almost looks like a Band-Aid with a cotton ball over it. You wear it during activity. You put it in a little container, send it back to them. They provide you with a breakdown of the analysis of your sweat. So, you're losing this much fluid, you're losing this much sodium. And then I go through it with you and say, okay, well, you're losing this much fluid, so this is what you need to target per hour. This is how much sodium you're losing. This is what you need to target per hour. And here's some products you can try to like help you get to that. Okay. But, it could really help, especially if you're having any GI issues, having any cramping, or even if you just want to improve your performance.
No, that's cool. And we want to plug that. It's going to be in the show notes below. If you want to connect with Jennifer Patricca and get her sweat test analysis done for yourself, if you want to get personalized coaching, online coaching, all that, it'll be in the show notes. Please connect with her, especially if you're a runner, if you're trying to get to a marathon or an Ironman. Those are pretty hefty goals. And as we progress in life and we're trying to be intentional, you need coaching. I'm a big proponent of coaching, mentoring, things like that. So here's a person in my network that you can connect with, and let's take advantage of that. Thank you, Jennifer, for your time today. I really enjoyed this talk. I learned a lot. I will definitely be telling more people about the education, the information you've told me about, and then obviously just trying to make people more intentional, more aware about their nutrition, especially when it comes to running, just athletics in general. I think it's, like I said in the beginning, there's so much out there, there's so much confusion, and we need to get some simplicity, some clarity, and I appreciate you relaying that information to us today.
All right, thank you, Chris.
All right. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of the Alive and Well Health Podcast. I hope this episode was beneficial for you. If it was, could you share it with someone? Like it, subscribe it, leave a comment below. The only way that we grow as a community is being intentional with our actions. And so I want to help as many people as we can. Let me know in the comments what you guys thought. And as always, I hope that this episode brings us one step closer to fully saying we are alive and well. Thanks.